Hope. Hope can be a very powerful, useful tool. Great motivator. It can get you over the hump. It can motivate you to perform well, even though the situation is probably not going to end in your favor. But at the same time, the hope that you giving your life for something, the hope that you doing something will inevitably lead to or end in something great happening from it. That's what I'm talking about. Additionally, if you've watched any of my prior videos, you also know that with great good also comes the potential for great bad, and vice versa. So the same way it can motivate you, hope can also leave you stagnant and keep you from taking action in some situations. And in this crossover, we are definitely going to talk about that. This is the crossover.
Put some respect on my name. You understand me? When y'all saying my name, put some respect on it.
So I'm talking about the C.A.S.H system. This one refers to the H, the last and final piece to that system, hope, and how this entire system uses each of these pieces to keep the population at bay, the mass, the majority, and keep a select few or elite in power, ideally through perpetuity. But there are some tweaks here and there that might need to be made, but eventually this system that's currently made, the financial system and everything, which I am going to talk about, in addition to religion, in addition to tradition, and a lot of the things we do, they're put into place to make the system run smoothly, to keep the general population at bay. Hope is one of those useful tools. I'm pretty sure we're all aware of the American dream and how people use the American dream to try to justify them coming here to America or to justify their unwillingness to act. I talk about the system of white supremacy, which the overall, it is global, and that's how the entire system is run. Whites on top, everyone else below them. It's an unspoken truth. Everybody knows it, but at the same time, a great, I don't want to say majority of the population, specifically white people in general, deny it because it's in their favor. They know that they benefit from it. And if they acknowledge it too much, then everyone else will do something about it because they are the global minority. However, the system works in their favor. Now, in America, they are the majority for now. We'll see how that works out in the future. But a good example of this, I talk about religion and how you can pretty much use religion for whatever you want it to be. You can make it whatever you want to make it. And how it's been used, it has been used to justify not only slavery, but also used to keep specifically black people, who are probably the most religious or churchy people in America, keep them praying and not earning. We look at the churches today. We already know that if you know anything about a black church today, the pulpit preachers preaching that prosperity gospel, it has not helped the community, not one bit, not at all. And Dr. King, he did warn of that. He did warn of that. So if you want to read his actually, there's a video on his letter. I probably should add that to the description. I'll go look that up and go add it to the description. There's a video on YouTube where it's him reading that letter from Birmingham prison. But also go and read his autobiography where he speaks of it, but I believe Malcolm, he talks on something else, but they talk about how the church it was pretty much used to keep black people from actually taking action. You know, that whole turn the other cheek narrative, where someone comes at you with violence, but you turn the other cheek. Yeah, that whole not taking action thing. Yeah, it might not necessarily be as true as you think it was. There was a lot of action being taken. It's just that that narrative was promoted to the majority. In addition to that, our financial system. Now, this one I'm going to touch on. I'm going to have some clips, and if you check in the description, there'll be some good examples of what I talk about. Of course, as always, TBA. You can go check out the business as well. Those videos are going to be in the description. I'm going to mention those, as well as some from a new thing that I just went through it, and it's the secret history of money. I believe is what it's called. I'm going to play two clips from that, where pretty much I talk about how the financial system, which it's supposed to be a how can I say it, free market. It's supposed to be capitalism, when in fact it really isn't. It's a front for that. You think it's a free market, you think it's capitalism, when in fact it's actually rigged. Well, he talks about that, and with a lot of other people who actually were higher ups and not only the banks but also the financial system itself. So it's a whole docu series in a way here on YouTube. You can go check that out in the description as well. But pretty much, I talk about how the hope of the American dream in this situation. Uh, TBA talked about this on the Black Authority. You can go check out those videos where he talks about the flooding of immigrants into New York. I also related that to what I saw personally from my own experience in Charleston, South Carolina. You're seeing rises of rent and the cost of living driving Black people out, a significant amount of them into homelessness. And then, in addition to that, you're seeing them actually, the government or local governments, or actually, I go so far as to say the federal government, because this is Biden himself backing this up. You're seeing them funding the movement of illegal immigrants into these areas where you're seeing the blacks being pushed out. Why is this? Well, we already know that they all believe in the dream, the American dream. I'm going to go ahead and say that they will never reach that American dream, at least not as they think they will. A lot of people, they think of the American dream, and this is what they think. They think that the whole rags to riches story, the whole as long as I hustle, I can have that car and that mansion, I can become a millionaire. That's typically what you hear about the American dream. If I work hard enough, I'm going to get that house. Well, over time, because of the financial system, and this is where those videos later are going to come into play, that because the system is rigged and because of inflation of the system, our dollar is worth significantly less than what it was for our ancestors, our parents, actually, our grandparents, definitely. So, where we would have been able to afford this house if we have our current income and money 50, 60 years ago, yes, we would be able to get that house. However, that dream has slowly but gradually declined to now it's okay, I'm going to get that house. Now, notice how this is where I say the hope thing. Notice how prosperity has, or the idea of prosperity, even though you're able to see these billionaires on their super mega yachts, most people know that they're not going to be able to get that. And this is where the craziness of the system is. People can justify damn near anything with the mental processes. Of course, this is greatly flawed because it's actually why we have a lot of issues we have in society today. But imagine you have this prosperity dream, the American dream, but you yourself know you'll never be as rich as Elon Musk or Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos, because deep down people know that the system is somewhat rigged. They might not necessarily know how it's rigged, but they know that when you're rich and you got money, you can influence the government. You can influence things. Money makes money. Well, I thought hustle was supposed to make money. I thought the harder you work, like I said, This is where hope comes into play. Yes, you potentially could get that house, but you're most likely going to get that house. And now, because of the rising cost of prices and everything, now everything has gone to where you're going to get that house. Those cookie cutter houses, my God, I hate them. And then people are going to slowly, like I said, they're going to justify and make sense of this. And they're like, okay, well, to them, they're going to still say they're winning because at least they got a house, right? At least I got a house. So at least I'm winning in that regard. So now I'm going to change my focus on I'm going to get that car. You know, I know SUVs are a big thing nowadays. They cost more than regular cars, and it justifies them making them. I believe Ford's actually making the switch on completely stopping to make sedans, and they're just going to switch all the way over to SUVs and crossovers because they're so popular. So G-Wagons are very popular. I'm like, oh, I'm going to get that car. Well, most people aren't going to be able to afford that. But you can rent it. I mean, you can go ahead and buy it, but it's going to financially wreck you. And that's actually what I do see that fairly common. That's actually happened a lot now. People use them refund checks. People use their PPP loans and whatnot to go and fund these types of lifestyles. We're now seeing them getting arrested and whatnot, right? Them going into debt, foreclosures. We're seeing a mass, well, eventually we will see a mass of cars hitting the used cars market. It's coming. But now you gradually understand, okay, to be more affordable, I'm going to get that car. And similar to what we saw earlier, it slowly but gradually declines. The hoopty's not on here, but you end up with this or less in reality. Some people, they might be in a sports car. So they could tell themselves, I'm going to get that car. And then inevitably what happens is they settle for that car. But it's the hope, it's the chance that you could get that Ferrari. But for now, you tell yourself, for now, I'm just going to get the Mustang. And then later on, when they realize that they're most likely not going to be able to afford the Ferrari because of the rising prices, then they settle on the Mustang. And that's if they get this Mustang, because sometimes some of y'all be driving this Mustang. I'm just being real. All right? Just being real. So, with that being said, why is this? Well, the American dream for those immigrants, TBA talks about them how they're flooding into all these areas. I witnessed this in Charleston, where they are literally funding these people, these immigrants, to come over to work, and they need their cheap labor because they're going to easily be exploited. Now, these folks, remember the C.A.S.H, you can combine the two. These folks, they believe not only in status, but everything else. Well, of course, the hope of the American dream, but at the same time, remember how I said poor white people, they would make the whole status thing where at least I'm not black, because the status thing kept them blind to the fact that they won't be the elite white people. Same thing with these immigrants. Well, at least I'm not black. What they tell them, the immigrants, and also the people from Africa, which, you know, we always talk with the FBA always talks about the tethers and how they talk about FBA, us black people are in America, and how we're Akata and we're lazy black people because that's what they've been told to believe. And they believe the status. Same thing with the immigrants. They're told all these lazy niggas, or they don't work hard enough. I haven't met. I mean, I have some of the laziest people that I know aren't black. They're actually Hispanic. They're very lazy. They're actually white, very lazy. And no, all Hispanic and white people are not doing well. Of course, the immigrants aren't. They aren't financially well off. Quite a few of them are fairly broke. That's where trailer park trash comes in play. Remember that narrative? That's what poor white people talk about. But of course, in their mind, at least I'm not black. Additionally, the government funding them to come into these high cost of living areas to squaddle up into whatever apartments they are afforded because they can't afford to live there. The reason why I know this is because the The black people that are there can barely, if afford to live there because they're constantly being pushed out. Now you got illegal immigrants being coming in there who legally can't work, or they're not supposed to, but we know that they are. And because they're not working for fair dollar. No, why would they bring in these people just to get paid the same, if not more wage than the black people that are already there? No, they're getting paid less. They're being exploited. It's because they're willing to take half of the income or less of the black workers that were there, the other minority workers, the other white workers as well. Because remember, a majority of the poor population is white. So I got labor, although it'd be illegal. They're willing to work for literally half of the legal workers. To each his own. But then again, they're living on the hope of the American dream, that the rags to riches stories. That's why some of these people are allowed or propped up, especially in rap, which is the most popular genre today. That's really why I believe it's there. It's because they like to promote this whole rags to riches story. And all these immigrants come over and like, oh yeah, these niggas don't know what they're doing because, I'm gonna get over here and I'm gonna make so much money. They don't understand the caste system. Or they're in complete denial of the caste system because they're able to actually get over here and they see some Hispanic people doing well. Well, guess what? I know plenty of black people that are doing well. I'm talking about black people as a whole. Last I checked, illegal immigrants are below black people as a whole. They're doing even worse. But to each his own. I'm going to play these clips talking about why this is what it is and how this relates to some of those issues I talked about in Roman history. When I was talking about Roman history earlier, I was talking about how they use amusement to kind of, you know, blur what was really going on in the society. But also, if you want to kind of transpose America onto Rome and how this whole dream of the American society, how like America, rah, 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 we're so great, the American dream, the rags to riches story, and how some of these folks don't realize that they're screwed, that that hope, that dream is less likely, if just as likely, as them winning the lottery.
Now we face the same problem as ancient Rome. There are now fewer and fewer productive individuals and businesses left to fund the buffoonery of government. Remember, governments cannot create prosperity, they can only consume it.
So pretty much, this is leading up to something that I remember saying where the boomers are the largest demographic. They're the least productive. And so we have less workers in the workforce. Actually, we saw the great, I forgot what they called it, but there was a mass of people retiring early because of the pandemic. So now they're going to be drawing from their retirement and some of these assets that they've accumulated. Okay, so that's stocks, that's their 401ks, that's if they had pensions and all that stuff. A lot of that money is going to be coming out of the markets because they got to pay for their cost of living. Now, this is eventually might balance things out because a lot of them own most of the houses. That generation, they own most of the assets because remember, their dollar was actually worth close to a dollar. Ours is worth like a tenth of that, if that, thanks to inflation, which is accelerating. If you go watch the series, he does talk about that. He breaks it down very well. And of course, you can always look it up for yourself. But this also goes to how wealth is actually accumulated, how people who think the general understanding of wealth, well, I thought you're supposed to work hard for your wealth. I thought this was how America worked, the American dream. Well, that was true once upon a time. Now, the way the system works, yes, your money or the currency we use is supposed to be a store of your labor. But in addition to that, the system's made to where money makes money. You can take your money to make more money. You leverage the labor of other people. If you need to do that nowadays, you can trade on the markets and stuff, where technically you don't need to leverage labor. You can make money from money, earning general interest rates. And then The banks and financial systems and financial instruments make the interest because they make this system where they make the money. Which, if you go watch the thing, you understand how money is actually made in the system, how French fractional banking actually works, how credit is a part of that, how it's fake money that's just created out of thin air. But in addition to that, there's also the people in government and how they make their wealth. If you ever wonder how some of these government individuals, most of them are millionaires, if you haven't noticed. They're actually part of the top 10%, in some cases 5 or 1%. Well, how is this? Why is this? Well, if they aren't wealthy when they already get into government, something like the Rothschilds or something, or the Kennedys, where they gain their wealth a lot of times through illegal means, but they gain their wealth and they play the game the way the way it is played today. Well, some of them gain their wealth after, which this clip, they talk about this in general. And he relates it to Rome, because remember, this is a cycle. This is how history has been from the civilizations prior to us. And this has been done before.
In ancient Rome, one of the fastest ways to accumulate personal wealth was to hold office and bestow favors on individuals or businesses in return for gifts. In other words, bribery. In the modern USA, I hate to say it, but not a lot has changed. Cronyism is now the norm in Washington. This is where industries and individuals can basically buy a politician to vote a certain way. In some cases, we've seen their influence extend to the highest levels, where outsiders are writing the legislation and having their cronies introduce it. We've also seen the advent of revolving door politics, where politicians may not take cash directly as bribes, but as soon as they've fulfilled their purpose in politics, they walk out the door of public disservice and into highly paid positions in the private sector.
So again, this is talking about the elite and how politicians can be either part of the elite or the puppets of the elite. And again, this relates to the rigged system. So while these immigrants are believing in the American dream and they're thinking that, man, I'm gonna make it as long as I work hard, as long as I do this, as long as I do that. But what they don't realize is the system's rigged against them. What they don't realize is they're going to be exploited. They're going to be living in poverty. And if you know anything about poverty, poverty is usually coupled with an increase in crime, lack of jobs, and increase in poverty and unemployment. Those two increase, as well as with crime. And in the system of white supremacy, if crime is black, oh yeah, they'll show that all over the news stations. Any black crimes, I mean, think about it. Any shootings or anything happens, they mention Chicago for black people. It doesn't even matter. It's like, oh, there was a mass shooting in Uvalde, Texas, but look how much black people get shot in gun violence in Chicago and stuff. It's completely ridiculous because it doesn't matter, because they want to promote black bad, white good, which is why when something happens in white society, a mass murder, they try to make it seem as if it's a one-off, as if it's not as likely to happen. Remember that situation in South Carolina? I went to Charleston. A freaking homeless guy got butchered with a hatchet by another white guy. Him and his wife were a homeless couple in Charleston. They freaking got butchered by a guy behind the store. The store owner knew him because I talked to him. And they were like, yeah, they like this happened like not long ago. That's not on national news. Store owner told me how they're moving the homeless people out of downtown Charleston because, of course, they're building it up. Of course, they're also funding and bringing over immigrants, right? But that homeless population has flooded out of the downtown area into the suburbs and the surrounding areas, increase in crime. She told me about how some dude who apparently might have been homeless, one of these homeless, got his hands on a gun, ran up on a porch with a kid, held the gun to his head, and asked him where his parents were so he could rob them. But like I said, this isn't in the news. This isn't going to be in the news because they don't want you to see this. So those immigrants that they're bringing into these areas, they're going to be impoverished. And what happens when crimes start happening? It's not going to be in the news. It's not going to be televised. I mean, look at China. Look at North Korea. We don't know anything about anything what's going over there. China is infamous for faking their numbers, which is why people, the China economy is the way it is now, why people are kind of stingy with investments in China, especially because when they can't hide it, the truth comes out, which, of course, the whole market's potentially crashing over there, especially with that real estate company that just happened. So it's easy for the media to just not show the violence of the immigrants and instead look at Chicago, look at all these black people, because that's what's going to happen. TVA talks about this in those videos in the description. You might hear me on there too, because I remember I called in to talk about this, how that paralleled what's literally happening in Charleston right now. So imagine they're spending $300 million a year annually just for the immigrants up in New York, just to house them, just to keep them there for their cheap labor. This is government money, people. So that American dream, that hope, that status they hope to achieve, all the amusements that they would like to buy, you know, that house, that car. Oh, and there will be plenty conflict. So, as always, this is just information. And I expect you to use this information to your benefit. Okay?
Don't let me down, man. If you let me down, I don't know what I'd do.
So thanks for watching, people. And until next time.
お前はもう